Hi, this is Steve from The Genuine Mentor. I've got another short series here that I want to roll out, and we're talking about your responsibility as a leader. But before we get started, I want to be clear about what this session is and what this session isn't. It isn't about being a perfect leader. And not about having all the answers. It's about responsibility and the kind that comes from influencing over people. And more specifically, the responsibility that doesn't go away when leadership gets uncomfortable. Leadership doesn't pause during hard moments. In many ways, that's exactly when leadership matters the most. Leadership is a commitment, not a role. It's easy to think leadership is about results, performance, and outcome, as those things matter, but leadership is really about people. It's about developing them, supporting them, guiding them, especially when things aren't going well. What's important to understand is that leadership doesn't ease up during challenges. If anything, it increases. Hard moments don't reduce leadership responsibility, they reveal it. The moment you accept a leadership role, you accept the responsibility. Not just when things are smooth, but when they're complicated, emotional, or unclear. Leadership isn't just about hitting goals. It's about what happens to people along the way. And in challenging times, the weight of responsibility doesn't shrink. It actually grows because people are looking at you for direction, stability, and clarity. Here's an uncomfortable truth that many leaders eventually learn. Leadership responsibility is always present. Even when we try to step around it, ignoring responsibilities doesn't make them disappear. It usually means they come back later, bigger, heavier, harder to address. Most serious leadership issues don't explode overnight. They grow quietly while things are left unresolved. This quote captures the reality perfectly. Leaders are shaping futures whether they intend to or not. Responsibility is already happening. The only real choice is whether it's intentional. Even on the days when you say very little, even when you delay, you are still influencing outcomes. At this point, all of these ideas start fitting together. Responsibility, influence, silence, action. They're not all separate topics. They're connected. Leadership isn't about one big moment. It's about a series of small moments that quietly shape the culture over time. At its core, leadership is influence. Every action, every inaction sends a message. What you choose to address, what you choose to avoid, what you tolerate, or what you normalize, all of that shapes the direction and culture of your team. Your people are always paying attention, even when you think they're not. One of the most misunderstood parts of leadership is silence. Silence isn't neutral. Silence teaches. When leaders don't speak up, teams still receive a message. They just fill in the meanings themselves. When leaders choose to remain silent, it sends a message to the team that certain behaviors or issues are acceptable, which can perpetuate existing problems and foster an environment of uncertainty. On the other hand, being proactive in communication, even in difficult situations, can create a culture of openness and trust. Addressing issues directly empowers the team to learn from challenges, fostering a mindset growth and strengthening relationships within a team. Communication empowers clarity, silence creates assumptions. Teams are constantly learning from leadership behavior, not from intentions, but from patterns. They watch what happens repeatedly. They notice what gets attention and what doesn't. And from that, they form a conclusion about trust, safety, and expectations. What leaders constantly act on becomes what teams believe matter. Decisions, follow through, consistency shape values more than any mission statement. Culture forms through repeated signals, not occasional speeches. When leaders stay silent or avoid important topics, teams often learn that those topics don't matter, or worse, they're unsafe. Over time, silence creates taboo, and taboo creates avoidance. This is how culture quietly drifts away from openness. The psychological safety doesn't come from policy, it comes from behavior. Leaders create safety through how they respond, especially when someone speaks up. When people feel safe, trust grows. When trust grows, collaboration grows. What leaders avoid often highlights the very issues that need attention. Teams notice that what gets sidesteps, they notice what never gets addressed, and avoidance almost always leads to misunderstanding and unresolved tension. Many leaders believe avoidance preserves peace, but what it actually does is it removes clarity of intention. Avoidance doesn't eliminate impact, it eliminates leadership presence. Teams don't stop interpreting, they simply fill in the gaps with their own assumptions. This quote reminds us that leadership presence matters. Leadership isn't about control, it's about modeling responsibility. What you demonstrate multiplies, whether you intend to or not. Responsibility comes most visible when leadership gets hard. Pressures rise, emotions surface, uncertainty increases, and those are the moments when leaders feel the strongest pull to avoid difficult conversations or decisions. Leadership responsibility feels heavy because you are carrying emotional weight, not just tasks. Discomfort makes avoidance feel appealing, but growth requires recognizing that discomfort and not escaping it. Hard conversations aren't hard because of the words we choose. They're hard because of fear. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of damaging relationships, fear of discomfort. But avoiding those conversations rarely protects relationships in the long run. When leaders often soften messages or delay clarity, confusion grows. Teams can't move forward without a clear direction, and a delayed clarity often creates more frustration than honest conversations ever would. Clarity delayed is clarity denied. This quote captures leadership responsibility beautifully. Clear is kind, unclear is unkind. Clarity isn't harsh, it's caring. Responsibility means choosing honest with empathy, even when it's uncomfortable. Underperformance is one of those places responsibility shows up most clearly. Leaders often tell themselves stories here that someone is trying to do their best, that circumstances will change, or that the issue will resolve itself on its own. Those stories can feel compassionate, but they can also be form of self-protection. The real question leaders have to face is this: is my avoidance actually helping this person grow, or is it protecting me from my discomfort? Avoidance rarely preserves dignity. More often, it delays growth and leaves people guessing where they stand. Leaders often create narratives that justify inactions, believing their good intentions are enough. However, it's crucial to recognize having good intent does not dissolve them from the responsibilities. Leaders must confront the truth. In my avoidance, genuinely aiding my team is merely a means of self-protection. This is where leadership choices start to split. Almost every difficult leadership moment offers two paths: growth or comfort. Comfort feels safer in the moment. Growth usually feels uncomfortable up front. Responsibility means honest about which path you're going to choose and why. Choosing the growth path means stepping outside your comfort zone. It means addressing challenges directly, even when it feels awkward or emotionally heavy. This path builds resilience, trust, and long-term capabilities in both leaders and teams. Growth rarely feels easy in the moment, but it creates strength and lasts. The comfort path often feels easier in the short term. It avoids tension, delays conversation, and keeps things calm on the surface. But over time, comfort leads to stagnation, resentment, missed opportunities, responsibility. Ask responsibility asks leaders to recognize when comfort is costing more than it appears. Leadership carries emotional weight that often goes unseen. Leaders absorb stress, uncertainty, fear, and pressure, not just their own, but their teams as well. This emotional load can be exhausting, and it often what makes avoidance tempting. Acknowledging this weight isn't weakness, it's part of responsible leadership. One of the most important truths in leadership is that delay is still a decision. Postponing a conversation or action might bring temporary relief, but it also creates consequences. Issues don't stay neutral while we wait, they usually grow. Responsibility means recognizing that choosing not to act is still choosing an outcome. This quote reminds us that responsibility is inseparable from meaningful leadership. Greatness isn't free. It requires leaders to carry the weight, make the decision, and stay present when uncomfortable. Choosing responsibility doesn't mean controlling people. It means caring enough to stay engaged. Responsibility shows up as support, presence, and willingness to act when it would be easier to step back. It's about leading with intention, not authority. It's important to separate control from care. Control restricts and creates fear. Care builds trust and collaboration. Responsible leadership is rooted in care, caring about outcomes, people, and the long-term health of the team. Responsibility isn't a one-time decision, it's something leaders choose again and again, often in small moments. Every day presents opportunities to either lean in to responsibility or quietly step away from it. Responsibility shows up in daily decisions, small choices leaders make, what to prioritize, what to address, what to follow up on, quietly shape culture over time. Responsibility shows up in conversations, engaging in meaningful dialogue, especially when topics are difficult. It's one of those clearest expressions of leadership responsibility. Responsibility also shows up in hesitation, that moment when discomfort appears and leaders must decide whether to engage or avoid. Growth happens when leaders choose to step forward instead of pulling back. Discomfort is part of responsible leadership. Facing challenges head on isn't a sign of something is wrong, it's often a sign leadership is being exercised well. The responsibility ladder offers a simple framework for navigating leadership moments. It helps leaders understand how responsibility moves from awareness to action. Awareness is recognizing situations that require attention. Many leaders stop here. They see the issue, but they don't move beyond noticing it. Ownership means accepting responsibility for the impact of those decisions and actions. It's the point where leaders stop distracting themselves and step fully into accountability. Action is where responsibility becomes visible. It involves taking proactive steps to address issues and support the team, even when outcomes aren't guaranteed. Follow through ensures responsibility doesn't fade after the first step. It means staying present, maintaining accountability, and enforcing trust over time. This quote reframes success in leadership. It's not about personal achievement, but about what happens to the people we lead. As we close, this is a moment to slow down and reflect. Leadership responsibility becomes meaningful when leaders pause and look inward. Consider the responsibilities you've been putting off. Think about how postponing them affects your team and your effectiveness of a leader. Notice the narratives that you use to justify inaction. Ask how those stories shape your decisions and your leadership style. Reflect on the cost of waiting to trust, growth, and opportunity. Responsibility often unlocks progress that delays quietly blocks. Leadership isn't about having all the answers, it's about being present, engaged, and willing to choose responsibility daily. When leaderships do that, their influence grows, and so do their people. I want to thank you for this opportunity to share this message today. And as a leader in my career, that leaning in and making those hard decisions are not easy, but they definitely make things move better in the future for what you're trying to achieve. And if you happen to work with a company that does yearly appraisals, there should never be anything that's a surprise in an appraisal. You should be addressing those things before that appraisal ever comes up. So think about how you manage, how you deal with your people, how do you lead? Be open and honest. Let people know where they're falling short and be that person to help them get where they need to get to. Thank you again.